I'm sorry again for my voice. I've lost my voice, so I'm just going to whisper a little bit. But thanks everyone for coming here to see the show. Thanks to Dr. Rosalina. What a fabulous venue this is. You know, such heart at its core of it. You can feel it when you walk in here. Books and art and community. And that's been where this film has had the biggest response has been in the community, because at the heart of the film is about the power of community, and it's about what the community is capable of above and beyond, you know, the organisations and the governments and the things. This is about what we can do as individuals and what we can do as people. I won't talk much longer than that. I'm very excited that Muzafar will be on Skype afterwards. He's the star of the show. And the only other thing I'll leave you with is that 5 years ago, when Australia stopped the boats, and I decided I should go and meet a refugee. This was the first refugee I met, so the whole journey's been completely transformational for me, and I'm very proud to be standing here on behalf of all the people you're about to see in this film who are still living there as refugees. And I'll talk a little bit more about that after the film. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Stop the boats, I wanted to know more. I was living in Jakarta, so I drove up to Cisarua, the staging post for boats that were going to Christmas Island. I wanted to meet the refugees. I wanted to know, who were they? Where did they come from? And what were they going to do now? Almost immediately I met Muzafar and Khadim. Khadim was 17 years old, and he'd been filming his friends and flatmates on his mobile. Muzafar, he was a photographer. We liked each other straight away, and that day we decided to start making a film together.
I love football. I was like, all the time I was dreaming to be like David Beckham and Roy Keane. They were my football idols. So I was offering prayer, regular prayer, and after prayer I was praying, God, I want to be like Beckham. play at Old Trafford, but soon I realized I cannot be like them. I should be realistic. I worked for the United Nations Development Program, UNDP, in Afghanistan. After 2 months, I got my salary from UNDP, which was $500. I decided to buy a camera. So $500 was a huge amount of money for me. The UN, when I worked, I had extensive travel to very remote areas. Most of my pictures are shot on the way, like I was sitting on the car from one point to another point. So those moments are like priceless. I had my first exhibition in Afghanistan through that camera.
I had a plan actually in Pakistan to film my journey. So unfortunately I ended up in prison and they confiscated my camera. And then when I decided to stay in Cisarua, I started filming with my mobile. And then with the mobile, 5 minutes film, it was about my roommates. Like I was letting that if someone come to film me, how I'm living here, but no one can. So I started from my friends. My concept was I should show their life for people in other countries. It is my life actually. It was my life actually. But I show it through my friends.
Hi, my name is Khadim. I am 18 years old and I am a Hazara refugee living in Cisarua outside of Jakarta. Since I was a child, I loved karate. I had a black belt and I was a national champion. But in Afghanistan and Pakistan, my people are persecuted by the Taliban. When a bomb went off near my school, killing 126 people, I decided that I had to leave. Like many other Hazaras, I'm stuck here in Indonesia. I have a mobile phone and I have started to make a film about our lives. I live in a small house with 3 Hazaras. Baz Muhammad, Rahim, and Amadullah. We try to stay positive and keep our days structured. Everyone has a job to do. Music is another way we entertain ourselves. Abdul Khalif is a great dambra player, so Baz Muhammad and the others made him a dambra. In Cisarua, we make them out of old motorcycle helmets. Afterwards, it was New Year's Eve, and we played music and watched the fireworks. It was beautiful.
Belongings there, all my status there. I was very active in social media, and I was threatened by unknown people. Then there was a huge explosion, another huge explosion in February. Then I called my family. I said, look, we cannot live in this situation. And everyone said, yeah, my family members, they said, you have to leave as soon as possible. I said, you have to be ready for very hard days. We will be refugee again. We will be below zero. We have to struggle our life. We have to starve. We have to put our life at risk. to reach to Indonesia, and who knows what will happen next.
There's about 5,000 refugees in Cisarua. They arrive as asylum seekers, and they can stay, but they can't work or study. So they register with the UNHCR to get their refugee status. It takes 18 months just to get their first interview. If they're approved, they hope to get resettled in a third country, like Australia. And that can take up to 10 years. In the meantime, they live in uncertainty and wait for the phone call from the UNHCR.
Most of these people are Hazara. Hazara is an ethnic, mostly they're living in Afghanistan, in central Afghanistan, and some of them are from Pakistan. They face persecution. In Afghanistan and Pakistan, they are killed by the religious extremists. Their face is quite different than other ethnics in Pakistan. They look Mongolian or they look Asian. The groups who claim responsibility of the killings of Hazara, they are extremist Sunni Wahhabi group. They say they are infidels. They should be killed. They have no right to live.
To get to Indonesia, the refugees sell everything that they have and they rely on support from family and friends to survive. It costs about $80 a month. And if they run out of money, they're forced to go into Indonesian detention camps where conditions are appalling. And once they're in the camps, there's no way out until they're resettled. The endless waiting and the unknown future creates a huge mental challenge for them. So with Eid coming up, and to break the monotony, Muzafar, Khadim and a few of the others decided to have a celebration. This was the first time the refugees had ever been together as a group.
که محمد از مدنج مهاجر است یک سلسله مشکلات سر باشه که اینجا آمده این وقت ثابت نیست که ما برای 2 ماه 3 ماه 5 ماه 6 ماه در اینجا باشیم همه بیش ما در جریان هستیم ما در اینجا ماندگی هستیم پس سالها در اینجا شاید ما سپری کنیم ما نیاز به یک جامعه داریم نیاز به یک کمک داریم کمک یک دیگه خود ما ماشاءالله هر نفری که یک جامعه نیاز داره ما داریم ما معلم داریم ما شاید انجینیر و دکتر داشته باشیم بین خود یکی از مشکلات ما بدتر هستن اینقدر ماشاءالله توانمند هستیم معلم هم هستن شاگردان هستن بین خود حقیقتا که گفتنی نداشتم فقط قوم زنده نشانگر چیزی هست که در هر جای گوره خودم زنده نگاه مونن دیگه ما شما میگم یعنی کارمانی خودی شما تاویل خودی شما
It is the middle of 2014 in Cisarua. I have been here about 16 families who are here are worried about their children's education. So we decided we must find a way to give the children a chance to study.
We had big gatherings, like 20 people or 25 people meeting every day or every week or so, regularly, trying to find our way how we can contribute or how we should solve this problem.
Many of us were very scared. As a refugee in Indonesia, we don't have the same rights as normal citizens. For example, we can't vote and we can't go to school. But the education of the children was important, so we went ahead anyway.
داشتن مکتب حق هر بشر است در این جهان. کسایی که بندی باشد در زندان حق اوضو هم است. پس این حق از ما را پس مدد از ما شده نمیتونه که ما طفلای ما به حیث که ما ماجرسته یا اساینسیکر کنند دوسته ما طفلای ما مکتب نرسد. A lot of baseless fears were created by smugglers among the refugee community. So they were afraid. Why, how and what? These kind of questions were popping up and they asked from us, why you are doing this? How you will do this? Who will pay for this? And who will teach? Because teaching is forbidden by UNHCR. My wife and my sister-in-law, they said they will go and teach. And Changiz's two daughters, although they are very young, they also said we will teach. So we were like becoming a good team.
Everyone chipped in to buy a few supplies, like a whiteboard, carpet, markers, and some notebooks.
Marker for whiteboard.
At the UNHCR office in Jakarta tells the refugees not to engage in any organised activities. So to start the school, they would put at risk the only thing that they had left, their hope to be resettled in a third country.
The day when everyone got together to clean, lay the carpet, and hang the whiteboard was a special day. That the learning center would not only be good for the children, but would also help create a sense of community among the refugees. We were doing something positive for ourselves.
My family come here and I am open.
So you are with your family?
Yes,
How many are you in your family?
5 persons.
Ah,
Future, maybe a doctor.
a doctor.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. We had no clue how to start this. Where we will find the books, or what should we teach them, how we should teach them. By the passage of time, we tried to solve and compromise with small space, with limited numbers, and with limited resources.
Hello.
Lucy Hamilton and her son were the first visitors to our school. They came with 50 kilos of books. That was the first gift we received from Australia since we started our school.
Yeah, I'm such a mature teacher.
in customs, and I thought that would be dreadful. So we came and bought the books to make sure you had some at least to start with, and we'll try to bring more. They've come from such difficult circumstances and they're still waiting for a future. So to have this school, it makes me so happy to see. It is hope.
Today my roommate was Muhammad, went to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugee Office in Jakarta. They decide if we are genuine refugees or not. After 9 months, he was given his refugee status. But he does not look any happier. When I asked him, he said he was a refugee since the day he left home, and the piece of paper does not make any difference to that. Nonetheless, we decided to have a celebration. We brought a fresh chicken, a real treat for us. And we invited some friends over. In Hazara town, Quetta. Everyone left abruptly to find out about news from home. 14 people died in the blast.
Afghanistan at their International Week celebrations. The students and teachers were excited and they spent their afternoons rehearsing for the big day. For most of the kids, it would be the first time they would meet people who weren't refugees.
So it was an opportunity for us how we can show ourselves. Whether we choose to show that we are hopeless, we are suffering, or we could show a positive picture of our country and our people. We decided to tell the story of our people, how they are living throughout the year, and our kids, the 55 students, they were part of this whole program, this whole performance. This is my country, Afghanistan, a mountains country, everywhere mountains, a sea of mountains, all crowned with snow. Hazaras. Questions about Afghanistan?
So in Afghanistan, are you wanted by the police? How long did it take you to get from Afghanistan to Indonesia?
It took me 1 week. We escaped from Afghanistan by car, but we were camouflaging ourselves. So we were hiding our identities. We entered Pakistan, and from Pakistan we had a flight to Malaysia. And we came here by boat.
You were sitting there while the kids were dancing, copying their moves, so it would be really good if we had time. Carefully so that you know what to do, and then in a minute we can all stand up and we'll be able to join.
We are forgotten people, but when we visited that school, they were laughing with us. They were sharing meal with us, and they were talking with us. And we thought that, yeah, we are also human beings. We are also valuable people, and we can teach someone who we are, and we can tell them our stories, and we can let them know what happened to us and why we came to Indonesia, why we fled from our country.
One thing I want to share that I have met friends, I have met many friends here, but one of them was Muzafar actually, which I am very happy and very lucky. The day when I met him right in front of UNHCR, when he was waiting for registration, I didn't have email address, or I didn't know how to use, but I was like a plan to work for refugees on that dot, but I didn't know how. Muzafar guided us.
When we started this learning center or this school, we identified some very serious problems, like the students came from Iran, from Iraq, Pakistan, Afghanistan. All of them studied in different curriculum schools or different systems. And we had only 2 rooms. How we can adjust 50 students in 2 rooms and 1 lounge? It was really tricky. We had to encounter a lot of complaints from the parents. They were saying our kid is very intelligent, you should promote him to the next class or the bigger class, while the bigger class was full. And we had to argue all the time. That was one of the factors that we decided to go from there and to go from there in a bigger place. We found that that space 100 meters away from our old school, it belonged to the tribal chief. It's called a village elder. couldn't sign on the agreement because we were refugees, we did not have a legal status. We were extremely happy to secure that building, and we were thinking how we can better use it. It was a guest house. There were a lot of mess all around in those 5 rooms. There were old beds, the mattresses, the floor was not clean. It was not clean for ages. When we agreed on renting the place, all the parents came. There were carpenters, there were construction workers, tilers, there were plumbers.
Khadim's films had been watched over 100,000 times on social media. Everyone was impressed with what the refugees had achieved, and supporters from around the world helped to buy materials and pay the rent for the new building.
Today we woke up at 5 in the morning and we came to Hazara to collect some rubber rice. We are going to use it under the floor, under the carpet. So we hope it will be comfortable for our kids. No matter if the community is very vulnerable, unable or very weak, but still they can do something for their children. And that was one moment that I believe that by teamwork, sincerity and commitment, big things can happen.
AIS, they have provided us these materials. They just, they asked us that they are going to pay to edit a fundraising. Yeah, they did a fundraising for us. We got them. Yeah, it's done by ourselves.
On 5th of August, we started this learning center with a lot of uncertainty. Now we have established learning center with 77 children and maybe 30 students waiting on waiting list. All of them are trying to get an admission. Even some people came from Jakarta, left their home and tried to find a seat in our learning center, which is the only learning center for refugees. And now we are feeling proud.
I'm Tahira, and I'm from Pakistan. And my husband name is Muzafar, and I have 2 kids, one girl and a boy. I came to know from a friend that yes, they are going to open a school, a community school. I said it's very good. I also want to teach here, and I also want to bring my children here. Yeah. I gave you an assignment here. Yeah. Have you done it? Yeah. Easy or difficult? Easy. Okay, so don't try. Sometimes when they make too much noise, they call me, are you come? They are making noise here. I say, okay, I'm coming. I'm on my way. Then I feel very proud. The knowledge that I have, the experience that I have, I want to share it. I want to give it to the others. many agencies that whatever it costs, I have to come to Indonesia, I have to reach to Indonesia, I will find him. But when I came here, it was a different country, with different tradition, with different people. A vast place. Very tough. But I hope he will call me. I'm searching. People say that forget him. I cannot forget him. People say, my friend says, my relative says that just go forward, leave him, because they think that they might have drawn. I don't think so. Because I know we have loved each other. We have passed 7 years of our marriage together. I can't forget that moment, that last night that we got online on Skype and he promised me actually. And whenever he promised him, he can fulfill that. And I hope he will come inshallah. He will come back.
I'm working on a film about Hazara women right now. Yeah, since past weeks, but still it's incomplete.
I wanted to make this short film to recognize the refugee women here. I think sometimes people see the hijab and think that they are oppressed or downtrodden. Sure, they dress more conservatively than Western women, but as refugees, we are all experimenting with new ways of life. And the women are embracing this change more than anyone.
And today we are going to play teachers and students versus each other. Only female. And in each team we have 9 players. From Black Beauties, Mr. and from Eagles, I am the captain.
Is it going to be a tough match?
That's because last match we won the match. 1, 2, 3,
When we had the idea to start the learning center, they were the first to volunteer. The Cisarua Refugee Learning Centre would simply not exist without them.
For me, I didn't see women playing football in Afghanistan, in Pakistan actually. They were not playing football. They even didn't kick the ball. But since we built this community, they started playing football.
In Afghanistan, you couldn't talk with women. Like if you talk, there will be a lot of positives. What he's doing, he's saying it's a bad thing for women, also a bad thing for men. But here we are same. We know we have the beauty. We have the same ID card. We have the same unknown future. So there is no problem. We have established an open environment for everyone. Australian International School they came, so they're playing, and the teams who are playing against, they also play against each other in the tournament. So the right number is the same, and the excitement is very high.
tried to get a boat and go to Australia, but each time I failed. Let me say the fourth time, the special one. On 19th July, again we were in one truck to go to Australia. Smugglers gave big plastic to keep your mobiles, bags in one plastic, and they took us near in the beach. When I saw the first time in my life, I saw the water. It was like a big mountain coming like this. I scared a lot. My family rang me and told me that the Australian government changed their policy. So don't come. If you will come, they will send you in Manus Island or in different islands. Don't come. Then I escaped the last one from smuggler's hand. I rang him, I don't want to go. Don't want to go. Yeah. Then I came here and met new friends.
Nonsense rumors or information that your phone calls are tapped or your movements are tracked where you go. If I call someone, so UNHCR will record or embassy will record, so it will damage my case. Refugees were living scattered or like strangers, they were not mixing with each other as a community. And a lot of restrictions that were self-imposed by refugees on themselves. And refugees, unfortunately, they were not thinking that. The refugees, they're not smugglers, they're not criminals. But when females, women teachers, they came in front, changed the perception of everyone.
Exotic music! One, go, raise, turn, never left. One, go, raise, turn, one more. One, go, raise, turn, go. One, go, raise.
The fear factor has gone within families, within children. The parents, they are very open now, very open, and they laugh out on the past rumors and their fear. And this school played a key role to make everything clear for the parents. And it's a win. It's a win of good and bad, because this bad information was spread by the agents and it's countered by us, like by education.
When amazing things goes, it goes very fast, you know. I'm thinking sometimes that when we start this learning center, it goes now 6 months, you know. Now we are thinking about next year to raise money and rent the place. It goes very fast. I hope our resettlement process also goes fast, you know. But the learning center, because it is amazing, you know, it goes very fast, very fast. In 1 month, like we have many visitors. There were students, university students, different universities like Monash, MIT. From many universities, they came and visited, and we provided them large meal, you know, they enjoyed. I was surprised when one of the students said that I want to learn more about refugees. I said, okay, if you learn, you can stay here with refugees, live with refugees. And she said, well, I have to ask my mother because we heard refugees are very dangerous. I said, I was laughing. We are not dangerous. You see how incredible things are going here, how incredible people are here. She said, oh, I have to ask my mother because we are scary, you know. We
we are really scared from refugees. I was surprised because people doesn't know about refugees. It's us who should educate them about refugees. Refugees are not just boat people or criminal or terrorists. They are very wonderful people, skillful people. Yeah.
One day, I was on the way back from a visit to the school when Muzafar rang. He had a call from the Australian Embassy. He was going to be resettled in Australia with his wife and daughter.
I heard you got some good news.
Yeah, I just told him.
Should I go?
No, stay here.
That first time I'd driven up the hill, that had just been on a whim, an idea. Now they were far more than just grainy newspaper images or the background of news reports.
I'm the fifth generation is refugee. I want to end this dilemma for my daughter. I want her to live without fear, to live as a free person. Whatever she wants to do, she should be free. Want to play football, there should not be restriction for her. If she wants to go to somewhere else, there should not be some danger on the way. She should learn and get education and serve humanity.
Today is a very special day for us because one of us, after 2 years living with each other, he left for Australia. And yeah, it is a very special day. So, I'm very happy for him that he has a place now to call home. As he told me that when I born till now we didn't have a home. And when I was just a kid we left Afghanistan and we became a refugee in Pakistan. So this is the first time. He said today is the first time that I'm going to my home.
I'm just imagining, tomorrow by this time I will be there. Yeah. That's unbelievable, Jolyon. She decided yesterday, Regina told her that we are flying. So she was very happy yesterday. She was helping us to pack our bags and everything. Yeah, Khadim is standing in front of me. I think the climax will be at the school when we say goodbye and also when we go to the airport.
The ticket means he has a safe place now. But the challenges still remain. Like he has a safe place now, he's going to Australia, there is no Taliban, there is no target killers to kill him. But there is challenge. Traditionally when someone leaves, we draw water. Dropping water means like we hope for your good life or a
future. When you left Afghanistan and Pakistan, did they drop water?
Yeah, it was equal. Yeah, my mother did. I saw when my home was located here, and we went to my friend's house to say goodbye. And my mother, I say goodbye here, then here, then here. It's like a different place. My mother was just walking after me. I can't forget the moment when we left. My sisters and my mother. There was a long way. They were just looking after me, and I was turning my face and looking till the end when there was nothing left. Refugee's future depends on others. You can't do anything, you don't have a choice.
Back in Australia when I heard that Khadim had been given a visa. He was going to be resettled in America. So I went back to say goodbye.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming to this place. Thank you very much. Thank you, Khadim Dai. Thank you, Aziz. Thank you. Kubra, thank you. Maria, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. I made my first film with this mobile. I didn't have anything. No access to a camera, no access to any other channel. So I used this mobile phone to make a film, my first film. And it's like won award and connected me to many people around the world only through this mobile phone. So I want to keep this mobile phone. This head. This head is made by my mother. This cap went a long way and reached to me. Long way from Pakistan to Melbourne and from Melbourne to Jakarta. So I got this head. I want to keep this head. It is like smelling my mother. It smells. Yeah. I think I was buying something in the shop someone gave me. There's in many languages, Arabic, Bengali, Dari, Farsi, Indonesian, Pashto. In 6 languages they started that you'll not make Australia home. You can't make Australia home. And for me somehow I want to take this. Maybe for 10 years later, I'll put somewhere, show that. Look at my eyes.
When we just run away with me, stay with me, swear with me.
Just here to learn. I remember 3-4 years before when I arrived here, people were just rushing around and trying to get a boat and go. But now, together, we build a community, we build and we achieve. Our big achievement, as I think, from my perspective, is the relationship we build. But I feel that like every one of you is a part of my family. Yeah. I'm a son of a mother who was exchanged. My mother was 13 years old when she got married. And it was not a normal marriage. They exchanged my mother. They gave my mother to someone and got their sister. They exchanged my mother. And she had her first birth when she was 16 or 15. I have sisters, those who are uneducated. My whole family, they were uneducated. I was always thinking that we have to put ends. My mother's name is Hawa Begum. I was always thinking that I have to tell the stories of Hawa Begum and I have to put end. We have to put end. There should not be any Begum who marry early age. There should not be any Tayyeba who is uneducated. My sisters are uneducated. My mother was uneducated. My whole family was uneducated. Our future children, they should know that what our mothers go through, why we left our country, why we spend our time in Indonesia. They have to know.
sometimes apart, but a part of it all. And sometimes we fall, or the price of it all. We draw the line between what is yours and what is mine. That side, damn, it is true. Happens to me, will happen to you. And I can change the sound of a song by playing the chord. I can change the course of a fire by laying down my soul. Can change the light in this room by turning it on. I can change the line that we've drawn by just walking across. Walking across. We are the ones to decide what will be true. We are the ones, you and I, the ones who get to choose, the ones who will lose, who will use, who will abuse, all the price of it all.
Thanks very much, everyone. Thank you. Oh yeah, you're talking. Thanks everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. Maybe I'll answer a couple of questions and we'll try and get Muzafar online and you could ask him a couple of questions if you like. So anyone want to go first? The reason those credits are so important to me is that that's our community. That's our borderless community of Australians and outsiders and refugees, and we kind of came together and created this thing together. So it's a community that we keep growing and improving and helping and accompanying each other. We just accompany each other. That's our kind of main thing. We accompany each other and we learn from each other. I've learned more from them than, they've learned from me, but it's been an incredible journey. You can ask me a question, it's okay. I sound like I'm dying, but I'm not. It's okay. I'm very much alive. Any questions? Yeah, one. Yes.
Hello? Okay. At the end it said the UNHCR reversed its recommendation or decision.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
When the refugees used to turn up in Indonesia, there was a sign at the UNHCR office that said refugees cannot be involved in any positive activities, cannot be involved in any activities. And so when Muzafar tried to get the community together, initially they were trying to have a refugee organisation, and they wrote a proposal and they sent it to the UNHCR, and then they waited for kind of many months, and eventually we said, my wife and I said, what do you want them to do? Here he is. Hey Muzafar, you're online.
Hello.
Muzafar, it's very timely. You came on board. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
So the question was about the graphic at the end, the UNHCR changing their advice. Do you want to talk about the change that happened in UNHCR in Indonesia through the creation of the school and the difficulties in getting it started?
it's been now 5 years then that we try to do something and we knocked UNHCR's door. I don't blame UNHCR totally that they are on their own side, but I think they have to deal with 15,000 refugees. But the good thing was that I had already worked with the UN. I knew there is a lot of children to be responsive of questions from it. I talked with my friends, with other refugees, and I could see that there is a huge potential, and refugees, they are well aware of the situation that they can do something by themselves. So I don't say it's me, but I always say it was us, all the refugees. So when we started doing something, we identified a lot of problems, and we realized that there are some problems that we can solve ourselves rather than to wait for UNHCR to do. And we were thinking it is a good idea that we can start partnership with the UN. Why not we help UN to resolve our problems, and that's actually helping themselves, helping UNHCR. So in those circumstances when we were trying to find the solutions, so education was one of the biggest problems. Like I had my daughter, she had to go to school, and there were a lot of other kids, they were not studying. So when we tried to start the school first, so there were two main issues, that what we should teach and how we should start the school. So it took us almost 1 year to do something in practical. So what we wanted to do, not for 3 months or 1 year, but we wanted to do for many years to come as far as refugees out there. So that was the key problem, that we were just thinking how we should start, that we could sustain that initiative. And I avoid calling these things as project because project has an ending, but that was an initiative. So we proposed to UNHCR that, okay, we want to have school, we want to start an association, but we did not receive any response. It did not stop us, but it actually helped sleeping leaders to emerge within communities, and they came up and said, look, we want to be teachers, we want to be the managers, we want to help the school to run. So the parents come out, but the most important aspect I saw was the resilience and courage of women, particularly from Afghanistan and Pakistan, where traditionally they don't have the role in the community to play a key role in decision making. Even in the families, they don't have an important role in decision making. So they said we want to take that risk, regardless of what happens to our status. So we will start teaching, and that time UNHCR clearly said you are not allowed to do any organized thing. So that was preventing many teachers to get involved. So I really admire the courage of women refugees that they stepped in this empty space and unknown destination, that what will happen to them, and then this school and the whole community was created around that school. And later on, when 3 years later UNHCR came to our school, everything was changed. Local people previously it was tried, but now they knew that, okay, who are the refugees, they are not harmful, they're good people actually, and they're contributing in the communities. So I give the credit mostly to the female teachers who started this school, and we helped them actually to run the school, and the parents stepped in, and they realized, okay, we can be we can be useful members of the community rather than waiting some organizations or some people to help us. And I should also say that we were really lucky to know some amazing individuals, amazing people to guide us about the traditions and customs of Indonesia, about the law. So within those boundaries, we could do our activities like keeping local communities happy what we were doing, let them know that it's about education, and it was actually a two-way education for them too. And also some amazing Australians who kept donating this school. I think financial aspect of school is not as important as the commitment, but it's definitely important. So till now we have been running this school, and that was made possible by amazing individuals who are donating us, and one of them is standing in front of you.
I just wanted to add that yes, many people came and supported the school, the Australian International School, many Indonesians, Australians, Americans, lots and lots of people. But actually it was Khadim's films that drew them there in the first place, and I think it was actually Khadim's films that drew the community together, because there was no community. And when we put that first film online, it got watched hundreds of thousands of times. Afghanistan, Pakistan, Indonesia, Australia. And this direct line, you can look up on the map, there's this direct line. So I think through that voice and through his raising his voice, that it drew people and it drew people together and kind of set the basis for then Muzafar to come in as an encourager, as a community, as a sleeping leader in the community, to encourage those people. And just to be really clear, none of the men would teach because they were afraid of affecting the UNHCR refugee status. So it was the women that said, "Oh, okay, we'll teach," and the men let them. And when the school was an instant success, it was on the back of that they had the authority to say. I'll step back a little bit. The football story is one scene that I wish the camera was there that day, but soon after they started the school, they decided they had to have a football team and they had to play a local team, so they went down to that local field and it was pouring with rain, monsoon, and the Indonesian team didn't turn up, and they were like, what are they going to do? And the women teacher said, "Oh, we'll play." And it was this incredible day. Many of them will say it's the best day of their life, but they played against the boys and the men, and they had the authority to continue that because they had authority, because they stepped up to teach, and the teaching and the education was such a transformational thing within the community. So, women really were a huge kernel. But, everyone played their role. It's like a jigsaw. Yeah.
Time is running, so I would like to do the last round of questions, maybe 2-3 questions, and then have the answers.
Yes.
One. Okay, please.
Hi there. First of all, the film was fantastic, so thank you very much. And I was curious, I know that the path through is often through Malaysia for the Hazara community. I know there's a lot of Hazara members in Malaysia. I was curious if this has overflowed from Indonesia to Malaysia, this concept of community and gathering and education, especially for the youth. Are you familiar with that at all?
Sorry?
If this same concept of community has overflowed into the Malaysian Hazara community, and if they've been able to gather and educate and create schools?
I don't know specifically, and Muzafar might know, but I will say that there's now more like 12 to 15 refugee schools in Indonesia, around about 1,500 refugees getting education from around about 100 volunteer teachers in Indonesia. So the idea is spreading across Indonesia. We'd love it to spread here as well. As I understand it, it's not quite as a benign environment, but I don't particularly know specifically. Muzafar, do you know of any initiatives here in Bangkok? You met those women a couple of years ago up on the border.
I think sitting in Adelaide after attempting to come to Bangkok reveals my situation that as a refugee I have limited access to play my role or go somewhere or to travel or get connected with the refugees in the region. So I have limited information about refugee initiatives in Bangkok that I could be directly in touch with them. But I heard when I was talking with my friend in Greece that there are a couple of schools in Thailand which is run by refugees. So they're located at Thai-Burma border, and the managers and the founders of those schools are incredible human beings and amazing and resilient refugees who have been successful to start those schools. Even I think they started these schools before our school. So I haven't been able to get in touch with them. So I have limited information to share about those things. But I believe education is a human right and it is a need. So this could be an unintentional response or reaction of refugees that wherever they go, taking their families, their children, it's about their future. They're thinking about their future of their families and children, so they would definitely think about schools and education. So they will take some steps to come up with some solutions. And there are, I think, a lot of examples of refugees starting schools around the world, not only in Indonesia or Thailand, but also in Malaysia or in Africa.
I just wanted to add to that the entire community, we've had about 17 families resettle. They're all still deeply connected with the Cisarua Refugee Learning Centre. Muzafar, myself and Khadim are project managers of a charity in Australia that supports education initiatives, and this idea that refugees can be a part of the solution is something that we want to spread widely and widely, and I feel like just a placekeeper until they can travel a bit more widely and I don't have to get up here and speak.
I think there are some people in the floor who can comment on this, but I think in Thailand there are two kinds, the one in the camps and the one outside of the camp. So this is a little bit different situation, but maybe Rebecca or others who work with refugee in Bangkok can give some comments about this before going to the other question.
Yeah, thank you. I just volunteer with a few refugee schools, and one of them is like a Saturday school mainly, but yesterday actually I just visited a really great learning centre that was set up by a refugee from Sri Lanka, and there are Pakistani refugees there, Sri Lankan, there's quite a big, particularly quite a big Pakistani community in Bangkok, but there are some really kind of positive things going on, mainly set up and run by refugees, and they really do face a lot of threats at the moment. There's a massive kind of police crackdown happening in Bangkok, and a lot of arrests. So a lot of them are actually scared to go to these schools at the moment, which is really sad. As you say, education is a human right. It's a fundamental human right. So it's sad to see this happening, but yeah, it's pretty amazing what people can kind of achieve when they work together and support each other, so yeah, it's great, and I think seeing movies like this really raises awareness about it. I think it's amazing. Should be shown everywhere, all over the world.
Please.
Yes. So, any more? Last questions? Okay, one. Anyone more? No, that's the last one. Let me count down.
Just following up on that, just a comment. We've been watching films, quite a few films like this for the last 2 or 3 years. Some very high-profile films, famous films. But I think these two guys, they were so articulate, and they spoke so tenderly and matter of fact, and yet, it really made a difference. I mean,
Thank you.
it was beautiful how the voice and the story weaved in, and you came in once in a while, so like you found the story, you found a way to tell it.
My trick has always been to how long I stay there, and then when I get out of the way and let that go. It's always been a balance of that. But thank you, and I thank you for your kind of commendation. And yeah, I was very lucky to meet Muzafar and Khadim and Tahira. But I will also say that there's 200 kids at that school still right now, and there's more Muzafars and Tahiras, and there's these young kids now that have been studying at that school for 5 years. 5-year-olds are now 10, 10-year-olds are now 15. There's this little group of girls that are like 15, and they're sassy and confident and like, oh my God, they're incredible, just perfect English and, just incredible. They're growing up and they've created a space for themselves, and they're hopeful and positive, and they're amazing. So we're growing, we're kind of growing hundreds more. We're just kind of continuing to grow them. And just one quick point is that one thing that we discovered, that education is a human right, and I've been at the APRIN conference, which is happening at the moment, and the big difficulty for NGOs and UNHCR and many other kind of actors in this space is legality. Like, how do we make it legal? It's so bloody hard, and it's why you're always in these rooms talking about refugees, and there's no refugees in the room, and everyone wants them there, but how do you get them there? And one thing that we did discover is that there's a certain advantage to being outside the system, and these guys were able to do it. The school there is still technically illegal. It hides in plain sight. Ministers visit it. It's been on every TV channel in Indonesia and BBC and all around the world. So we don't hide it, but education is the key. Who can stop a group of people educating themselves? And if you're stuck in limbo up to 20, 25 years now, they say in Indonesia, what's the best thing you can do is education, and wherever you end up, that's the thing you can take with us, whether it's in the onward journey, whether it's stuck in the middle or going back. This education, this growth, there's a beautiful opportunity in there, is what I'm trying to say.
No more question, and I like to have a question myself, but I suppose I have to give
It's not very quick Camilla that he asked. I want him to see us. Yeah. Okay.
Can you see?
Yeah, so my question is about, a part of the video mentioned that refugee could not work, and some of them seem to be able to support themselves, but towards the end there was a guy who could not afford himself and then has to be deported. So I was wondering, during this, because of this circumstance, how do they earn some income and, survive?
Most of them have
I have another question. Yeah, do you want to ask any question? Okay, I like to have a little bit, maybe a little bit critical question. I don't know if you see me, but can you do something about the refugee that currently Australia is putting in an island? Australia is coming out quite nicely from this movie, but we know the attitude towards refugees not always as is possibility to organize some activity in Australia, not you necessarily, but with other people. And the second, what were the challenges of, the power has come out very strongly, but what challenges you had to overcome to be able to do this? I'm sure you encountered a number in the way, and how were you able to overcome those?
Did you hear that, Muzafar?
Yeah. First, I would like to comment. I think this is the question which is asked now, and the comment from the volunteer who is working with the refugee communities and talks about Pakistani refugees. I totally, I am really sad that the situation is not changed since last 2 years. That last conference when I attended and met refugees from Pakistani communities in Bangkok. So that is the situation, and this is the reality that we have to accept that, the refugees, the system doesn't favor the refugees. But it's all about connection and education, how we connect the communities, how we establish this relationship between communities. I think as human being, when someone leave the country or leave everything behind, that's definitely not an easy decision to take, but he has to do that for the sake of saving his life and jump into unknown, and that could, and he would pay the price. I can imagine the situation in Bangkok, how people they are scared of doing things, or they get together, start something, and then it's disrupted. I think we have to keep doing this, and I believe refugees, they are definitely desperate, but we have to change our approach for refugees. We have to not consider them as beneficiaries, as project people, and short-term activities for them. It is like engaging with them as human beings. They are in a situation that is much less advantageous for them. So they have no right, but those people who are working with them, they have to think that, okay, if they have rights, they will do the same things which you are doing. So I always say that we have to consider them like whatever they do, not as projects, it's initiatives. They're not like aliens, they are people, and different countries have different rights on them. Like Indonesia, we had this advantage that we could live with the people. We could have a school in the community, but we did not have legal right to work. So there are always advantages and disadvantages, but we can use disadvantages as advantage. What if we establish a relationship between Thai communities and refugee communities? Let them know that they are not tourists, they are not strangers, they are people that face some persecution. They had some problems in their countries. Why they are here? They are here for a short time. And we can just keep knocking the doors until it starts changing. Because we had the same problem in Indonesia. We faced the same problem because the local communities, they were not happy from UNHCR, they were not happy from IOM, and they had the office in the communities. They had to wrap up their office and go to Jakarta. But since we started this school, when immigration came, and after 4 years, immigration talked to the people say we need these people. We need refugees because they are actually helping our microeconomic system. They are renting our homes, they are buying stuff from our shops. They're actually not sex tourists from Middle East. They are refugees, so they're harmless people, and we are now understanding them much better than before. And I don't know how many people like from bigger organizations, but I want to give the contrast of what we are doing and what is happening in other islands in Indonesia. There is total isolation between refugees and local communities in other islands like Makassar, Medan, and other islands in Indonesia where refugees live. They are kept very isolated from communities. And when I talk with my friends who are in those detention centers, they're in community centers, they're refugees, but they say they're not allowed to talk with local communities. They are not allowed to bring them at home. They are not allowed to be friends with them. And the same, likewise, it's the same kind of hostility from the local communities. They face prejudice on base of religion. They face prejudice on base of their ethnicities or non-Indonesian things. But when I compare that, like millions of dollars are spent to make those detention centers for refugees and the community centers for refugees just to keep them isolated from the community where they're living for centuries. So why not they start establishing relationship between these two communities? And I think education is the first step and most uncontroversial step that that relationship could be built. Because what we did is that we encouraged Indonesians that we are trying to learn Bahasa Indonesia and you are most welcome to come and learn English from us. We want to contribute. There are a lot of tourists coming in your area, so we want to contribute in your community. If someone died from the local communities in Indonesia, we take part in their funerals. We celebrate their Eid and other festivals. So there is really good relationship, and we can change this through first step. As Jolyon said, he wanted to meet a refugee, then he took a car and came and met refugees, and that was the start of relationship, and that's how it could be.
Now they don't let me go.
Too. And I think there are advantages on social media, as Jolyon said. One video was watched on 100,000 times. If there is someone who could accompany refugees not to implement project with them, accompany refugees, be with them, they will find their way. I think they just need a spark and some oxygen. They will burn.
I think what Muzafar is indicating is the power of community. It's the power of the community. And just to go back to the comment on that UNHCR title about they changed their approach, it's not actually negative towards the UNHCR. What I was trying to say when I wrote that is look what the power of those few refugees and $200 did. They changed the UNHCR's approach. They're the leaders. They're ahead. And too often, as individuals, as humans, we revert to the UNHCR, the NGOs, the INGOs, the Australian government. The Australian government's a bastard. But also, on this end of this thing are a few 300-400 Australians who have individually reached out. The whole operation operates on small donations from Australians. Australians go and visit, they go and live with them, they study with them, they play with them. So there's power in community, and we don't need to hand off that responsibility to governments, to bigger organisations. We can lead them because they're stuck in their own bureaucratic system. But we can step out of that, and I think that's kind of what happened there at the school.
Well, unfortunately, I am afraid we need to close because we have some time of closure in this place, and we want to be sure people can still have some coffee outside and tea and continue the discussion informally. There is a lot to reflect on, so thank you very much to the director as well as to you. I hope we will have another occasion to come to Bangkok in the near future, and then we can talk more and come to Junction for sure. And on your way out, please give a donation because this allows us to continue this kind of activities and more. And if you have time, come tomorrow and also Saturday, because also will be very important topics, although not so important as this one maybe. Thank you again.